Hello and welcome to the Empower Yourself Summit. My name is Pamela McAlexander and I will be your host. Today I actually have a very special guest with me. Her name is Sunny Dawn Johnston. And Sunny is an internationally renowned psychic medium, teacher, author, and motivational speaker. Sunny is the founder of the Sunlight Alliance, which is a spiritual teaching and healing center in Glendale, Arizona, which was created as a place where people could learn how to find and follow their personal spiritual path, recognize and own their natural intuitive gifts, and cultivate a spiritual connection with loved ones who have passed on. Sunny's message of love never ends has drawn thousands of people from all over the world to her workshops, events, and private mediumship sessions. Sunny is also a best-selling author of Invoking the Archangels, a 9-step process to heal your body, mind, and soul, as well as No Mistakes, Living Your Purpose, Find Me, and her soon-to-be-released book, which I believe will be out in October of this year, The Love Never Ends, Messages from the Other Side. Sunny has been featured on many local and national television and radio shows, including Coast to Coast with George Noory. She has hosted radio shows and recently appeared in the award-winning movie Sacred Journey of the Heart. And her most recent TV appearance was on her very own premiere of A Seance With, which was featured on Lifetime Movie Network just this month. Sunny volunteers her time as a psychic investigator for the international organization Find Me, which is a non-for-profit organization of psychic, investigative, and canine search and rescue volunteers working together to provide leads to law enforcement and families of missing persons and homicide. And my own special endorsement on her, Sunny is one of my very own personal mentors, and I love this woman to death, and I'm so glad she is able to be with us today. And I welcome Miss Sunny Dawn Johnston.
Well, thank you so much, my dear. Thanks for inviting me.
I'm glad you could be here with us. So as you know, Sunny, our Empower Yourself Summit is focusing on helping our listeners to understand that they do have the ability to conquer their fears, eliminate self-doubt, take their power back, and live the life of their dreams. And I was just wondering if you could share with us maybe one or two of the struggles that you yourself have gone through in life, and what you went through, what you did, and then ultimately where you came out on the other end to be right where you are today, which is obviously doing what you love to do.
Wow, just pick one or two, huh?
Where to begin, right?
I guess one that I think most people would relate to is one of my great struggles was self-love. And being able to really love myself unconditionally. You know, I would hear that term, and I think a lot of people do. You hear that term and you go, oh yeah, that sounds really nice, but what does it mean really? And so for me, I think it was, you know, I had a child when I was a teenager and out of wedlock, and you know, it wasn't really something anybody was excited about, and more guilt and shame around it. And so when he was born, one of the things I really wanted to be able to offer him was the opportunity to learn to love himself and to give him that unconditional love from me, because I wanted him to feel good about himself, and I didn't. But what I realized is I couldn't give him that until I had it. And so instead of being able to just be a parent and a teacher and a guide for him, what I recognized and realized was I had to do some of my own healing work and find a way to learn to love myself so that I could then in turn be able to love him unconditionally. And so that set me on a, you know, good 10-year journey to discover, you know, why I didn't love myself so much, which was a lot of it was just guilt and shame and fear and kind of old ways of thinking and belief systems that we're brought up with, and comparison and judgment and all of those things. So number one, recognizing why I didn't feel that. And then number two, and most importantly is, and how could I do something different? How could I feel different? And for me, you know, it was learning about, and connecting with the energy of the angelic realm. That's really what helped me to recognize that I had these helpers, these beings around me that were there, whether I called on them or not. They were there simply because they loved me, because I am love. And that if I had enough value for them to be around me, then there must be some value within me. And so for me, it was working with Archangel Chamuel and learning to accept myself where I was, not where I was going to be, not where I would be if I lost the 25 pounds or had the $10,000 in the bank, or even for me, it was just to get off welfare. Not when I got to the place I wanted to be, but to love myself in the place that I was then, which was very challenging for me. And it took me a long time to do it. So I think that was one of them. And Shamuel's energy, being the angel of unconditional love, really helped me to start that process and to recognize that, you think you're such a bad person because, you don't have any money in the bank and you're a single mom and things like that. But come on, you have a good heart and you're kind and you're loving to other people. You're just not to yourself. So you've got to offer that to yourself like you would offer to others. So that was one that was, I think, a major critical for me. One of the other ones was recognizing that the energy that I surround myself with is a projection of and an acknowledgement of the energy that I feel inside of myself. And so that I would attract to me what I truly believed about me. And that showed up in, jobs, and it showed up in relationships and in the money I was making. And what I realized was that I did not feel good enough to have loving people in my life, supportive people in my life. And so I attracted to me instead a lot of addictive people, a lot of addictive energy, a lot of takers, and felt very much like, in some ways, like I was there to help them or to save them or to fix them. And the only problem was they weren't asking to be fixed, and they weren't signing up to be fixed. They were just living their life, doing their thing. And I was under the assumption that they might want to feel better because I so much wanted to feel better. And so I realized that, because I had such a negative idea of myself, I was attracting to me. They looked different on the outside, but I was attracting to me people that had that same negative self-image. And that if I wanted to create a different kind of life, I was going to have to start from the inside out with my thoughts, with my beliefs, with my affirmations, with my the environment that I was in. And I was going to have to make lots and lots and lots of choices to do something different, which was, it was painstakingly difficult to call myself into presence and take ownership over what I'd created and then make the choices to do something different.
Sunny, let me ask you this. You, of course, because I have worked with you directly, know some of the more, critical details behind, those two specific types of situations. And, it's so easy for people to, hear somebody talk and think, oh yeah, they struggled with this or they struggled with that. Would you be comfortable enough sharing like an example, for example, with regards to the toxic environment that you were in at the time that you had your first pregnancy and you were a teenager, and how that ultimately affected him when he was born? Would you
Absolutely. Yeah, for sure. Yes, during my pregnancy, so I found out I was pregnant, I was 18, and I was not wanting to have a child. I wasn't interested in having children ever, actually. But when I found out I was pregnant, I really had decided I was going to have an abortion because I just didn't feel like I was mother material. I knew my boyfriend was not father material, and I thought that was the best solution for everybody involved. But what happened is I went to a free clinic, it said in the newspaper, to confirm that I was pregnant, because I was hoping that I was just making it up, or that I read it wrong, or that it was just wrong. And when I went in to have my blood work done, which I did, I found out and discovered that it wasn't a free clinic necessarily, although they did pregnancy tests for free. It was a Christian counseling center. And so the Christian Counseling Center created the opportunity to look at what happens to your body, what happens to the baby if you choose to have an abortion. And you had to watch a video, you had to walk through a hall with all kinds of images. And so I walked into the place thinking, okay, well, at least I have a solution to my problem. And I walked out of the place thinking, okay, I'm going to be a mom. And scared to death of that also. And so what happened is over those next 3 months, that fear started manifesting in my body to a level that was extremely toxic. I was very angry. I was angry that I got caught because everybody else I knew was doing it too and nobody else got caught. I was very scared of being responsible for a child. I had no idea what you do with them. I was very afraid of the fact that my boyfriend was going to be a part of this because he didn't even work at this point. And so I knew I was going to be the one in charge of that. So what happened is I built up all this anger and resentment and rage and sadness and fear in my body. And within 4 months of my pregnancy, so when I was 4 months along, I developed toxemia and I had to go on complete bed rest. And it was severe. And toxic thoughts equal toxic body. And so that continued because then once I went on bed rest, I didn't even have anything to distract me. I had to move back in with my parents, which was not fun for any of us. My mom had to take care of me because I literally could only get up 3 times a day to go to the bathroom. That was it. And so it was a very, very scary time. And my body just continued to respond to my toxicity in my head. So about a couple of months after that, I developed preeclampsia, which then turned into eclampsia. So by the time I was ready to deliver my son, I had full-on eclampsia, which basically is your body begins to shut down, and it's very dangerous for both the mother and the child. So when I went into labor with my son, I actually had a stroke, and they emergency us in, they emergency C-sectioned me, took the baby, and my son was fine. But I, on the other hand, was not. I had hives all over my body and had 106.3 degree temperature that ended up lasting for almost 3 weeks. And during that time, they couldn't discover where the temperature was coming from, where the infection was. They literally went back into my C-section. They opened me back up, thinking maybe they left something inside of me. They tried to grow out the bacteria, and they couldn't discover why I was so sick. Well, now looking back, 24 years later, I understand that my toxic thoughts have manifested so much that the infection is anger. It's fueling the fire, so to speak. But at the time, I didn't know that. And so it was actually the day before Mother's Day, which would have been my first Mother's Day. The doctors came into my hospital room, and I was in the room by myself, and they brought a piece of paper with them, and they said, we need you to sign this piece of paper. We need to sign your rights over to whoever you want to be responsible for your son, because you're a single mother, and because you don't have a father involved. Although my boyfriend at the time was present, he wasn't involved. And so we need to know who the baby goes to in case you die. And I realized at that point that, first of all, I realized I was really sick. I didn't know I was as sick as I was. And then I realized, oh my God, I need some help, because I had assumed that I was at the place where, if you're sick, I was 18, so I was naive. When you're sick, you go to the hospital, they fix you, you get better. And when the doctors came in and said, yeah, you're not probably going to get better, is when I realized that I needed to ask for help in a different way. And so what I did is I felt guided, and this is when I met connected to Archangel Raphael's energy. And he guided me to open my arms and open my heart, basically in my hospital bed, and just breathe in this healing energy. I would imagine the color green, breathing in this green energy and moving it through my body, and then breathing out yucky, blackish, brownish, yucky energy. And I did that over and over and over again for 12 hours. And the other thing that I did was I also felt guided to call all of my family and friends, family that I was actually upset with because they were judgmental of the fact that I had gotten pregnant and, kind of telling jokes and making it kind of a funny thing when, it was really hurtful to me. And I called all of them and I just said, I need prayers. I need help because if I don't, I'm not going to live. And between doing those two things, that next morning, Mother's Day morning, I woke up for the first time and my fever broke. And, the doctors called it a miracle, basically, like, we don't know what's happened because we've been pumping you full of stuff and your fever hasn't broke. And then as soon as we stopped, your fever broke. Well, I chose to allow that healing in, and I hadn't done that at that point, whether it was because I was too scared, whether it was because I didn't believe that I could get better. But when I made that conscious choice with Raphael to be able to say, okay, I deserve, and I want this healing, it happened, almost instantly. And so the next day I checked myself out of the hospital and, went on it was a long time to get healthy and get strong and better, but ultimately, obviously I did. We're here 24 years later. But it taught me so much about asking for help. And the other half of that is being willing to receive it. And it also taught me how we create so much crap in our body, in our lives, when we are not mindful of where our head is and what we're thinking about and what we're creating in that way.
Wonderful. I really appreciate you sharing that story. That is one of my favorites, and I'm sure there are people that can completely relate to that story. And when I look at you, it's always so hard because you're this beautiful woman who just has her act together. And, when you would go back and tell us stories about the things and the struggles you went through, weight issues, just things that average, normal people go through. To me, it's just so encouraging to know that there's a way out of that hole.
Yes. Yeah. And that's why I'm willing to share. When I wrote my first book, Invoking the Archangels, one of the comments that happened so frequently was, one of the very first comments I heard was, you were so vulnerable in this book and you were so willing to share. And they said, was it hard to write that, being so vulnerable? And it honestly never even occurred to me that I was being vulnerable. I was sharing from my heart because I want people to learn. And a lot of times the way we learn is through other people, if we're smart, right? We don't have to learn it all ourselves. But it didn't even occur to me that I was being vulnerable because I had already healed it. So it wasn't like I was opening a wound. And I think that that's what all of us can do to help support each other is when we get honest and we tell the stories of our lives from an empowered place, from a very honest, integrous, truthful place of, this is how shitty it was, and this is how dark it was, and I was in this situation. I mean, I have all kinds of stories because it took me a while to figure it out. And all of us have some kind of story. Maybe they're not as deep and dark as others, but we all have those moments. And if we share them and we don't hide behind them, we don't have the shame around them, then they can actually be motivation, just like you said, motivation for, look how far you can come. Because I was that little girl that had no value and no self-esteem. And I was that girl that had addictive drug addicts and alcoholics all around me and trying to save them all. And I was that girl that was on food stamps and welfare and had no idea where her meal was even going to come from. And that girl that slept on the floor because she didn't have money for a bed and never had a crib for my son because I didn't have the money for it because my boyfriend drank our money away. Those things are real. That's true. That's how I allowed myself to live because I didn't have the value in me. And as soon as I started to get just a little glimmer of value, then I started not allowing those things in my life any longer. And that's where the change was made. And then, of course, the healing occurred.
So that was really the turning point, was just those little glimmers of things you started doing on your own, just kind of taking that step out of what was the norm, what was comfortable, even though it sucked.
Right.
To be able to step into the path that you were then led down that led you to where you are now.
Yeah, and I think that, the most difficult, and it's interesting because this has come up so much in the last couple of weeks, is it's time to get back to basics. I think a lot of us have tried to expand into going into all this deep stuff. And the truth of the matter is it's basic. Pay attention to where your mind is because your body follows it. And for me, it was changing my thoughts in my head. And it was so painful to do that because that meant I had to pay attention to the thoughts in my head, first of all, and they were so negative, and they were so, it was, you dumbass, you fat ass, you're stupid, you're because of the environment, because of what I created in my life, that it was so painful to be mindful of what was in my head that I didn't want to be, which is why I would run away from it. But when I made an agreement with myself to say, you know what you are doing isn't working, and worst case scenario is this won't work anyway. And even though, saying positive things feels like bullshit, it doesn't feel true, and it doesn't feel like I'm being honest with myself, at least it's not to the negative place that I am right now. And so what could it hurt? And so that's what I did, was I started really focusing on my thoughts, like consciously present and aware. And it took me years. But what happened is I started noticing that a little bit of light and a little bit of light. And, oh, that doesn't feel like, like I'm okay. I would start, I'm okay. Not I'm great, not I'm wonderful, not I love and accept myself exactly the way that I am. I'm okay. And eventually that got to be, okay, that feels all right. It doesn't feel like a lie anymore. And then it came, oh, I love myself. All right, that feels okay. That feels like maybe it's possible. And then one day it was like, damn right, I'm going to own that. That is how it feels. And so it just evolved. But this was a long process for me. It doesn't have to be that way, but it was a long process for me. And it was the key to all of that was presence, being present with yourself. And that's hard to do. We set up all kinds of distractions in our life. I was a queen at it.
Now, let me ask you this. When you started being present in your life and you started down this other path, clearly the environment that you were in, which was toxic and not making you happy and not keeping you where you wanted to be, did people just start falling by the wayside that were in your life, or did you have to make that conscious effort to walk away from them?
I had to make the conscious effort. Which was very, very difficult. And I actually made that conscious effort several times and then allowed them back into my life several times. And so I did that over probably a year-long period. I threatened for the first year, if you don't this, then I'm gonna that. But it was a threat, and I did it over and over and over again. And so they knew that. But then the second year, I actually would follow through with it, but then they'd come back, and then I'd be like, okay, we'll give you another shot. And what happened for me that really ended it, and it wasn't intentional, it just, the universe worked that way, knowing probably that I would back down, was I had moved out of my boyfriend's house, the shack we lived in, and gotten an apartment, or I rented a room in a house, and which was very expensive for me. I didn't have any money. I still was on welfare and food stamps and things, but I was saving every single penny that I had to be able to move out. And so when I finally did, I let him back into my life many times. But one of the things I said in April was, if you haven't changed by the end of the year, I'm done and I'm gone. And I didn't even know exactly what that meant. I just said it. And of course, he had no reason to believe me because I'd said it many other times. And so, in May, he would show up drunk and I'd say, okay, I don't want to see you anymore. And then 2 weeks later, he'd come and say he was sorry. And I'd say, okay, but if you haven't changed by the end of the year, and I kept giving him till the end of the year, and I kept giving him till the end of the year. Well, December 27th of that year, my great uncle died, and I lived in California, and my parents lived in Arizona. And my great uncle died, and he lived a half hour away from where I was living. And it was December 27th. And my mom and dad were coming on December 29th for the service. And when they called me to tell me they were coming, I just said, bring the truck. Like, it's time, I'm going. And so because I realized, okay, he's gone, they're coming, they never come here. If they're going to come now, if I'm going to do it, I'm going to do it now. I can't wait 4 more days. But I felt like, oh my God, maybe he'll change in those 4 days. I mean, I was very sick in this. But when that day came, when my parents came after the service, I packed up my truck and I went to him and I said, I'm leaving. And he said, it's not the end of the year. And I said, you know what? I know it isn't. And I really wanted to give you those couple of extra days, but I know it's not going to change. And he says, well, you've said that all year. What would make it any different? And I said, and the only thing that I could say was, this time I meant it. And I didn't know why I meant it, but this time I meant it. And, I had to take my son and tear him out of his arms and walk away. And I cried the entire trip to Arizona, 8 hours. I cried every single hour of that trip. But once I got to Arizona, I never cried again. Not over that. I cried over other things and other opportunities and things that I felt like were mistakes, but not ever over making the choice to leave, because I knew that that was the best thing for myself and for my son.
Wonderful. Well, I know things have really been happening for you probably over the last 14 years that I know of. And share some of these successes with us, because you have had such tremendous growth over the last 14 years, and it just seems like it's never going to end.
Well, hopefully not. I always want to continue to grow and expand, because that's the opportunity we have here in life. So, I think what some people would look at as successes to me are more like just the next step. And so what I've really done with my life, I believe, is I've really just tried to live it from a heart space and being present. And in doing that, I think I have been able to create and attract to me opportunities that some people don't necessarily receive in the way that I receive them. And I think that that's because I don't focus on a specific thing I want. I just focus on being open to be, the best me I can be, and the greatest teacher I could be, or the best mom I could be. And then I let the universe really bring the opportunities to me. I mean, I really, one of the comments that I share a lot is things just fall in my lap. Things just come to me. And other people will say that, how the hell did this happen to you? Like, you just have all these things just happened, and they do just happen. And it isn't that I'm not in the background working my ass off and doing all of my emotional, personal work, as well as my business work, as well as, speaking and teaching and all that. But it's that things just come to me, I believe, because I carry the vibration of attraction to whatever is for my highest good. So, like, literally, when I got my book contract, most people, when they're writing a book, have to submit their manuscript to all different kinds of book agents and look for an agent that will take their book. And I actually had somebody come to me and say, hey, I want to give you a contract. And just never had even seen what I had written. And same with this TV show that we just aired a couple of weeks ago. I got a phone call from James Van Prague's production office that asked me if I would like to try out for this TV show. Never was I interested in being on television, with the exception of if I could be a teacher, but not ever out of my, like, I never said I want to be on TV. It just, I want to teach in the best way and the highest good for all involved, and whatever form that takes place, I'm open to. I've done a lot of speaking, which I love, and a lot of teaching at workshops and events, whether they're small, little, teeny, intimate groups, or whether they're thousands of people, doesn't matter to me. And so that's been kind of a really cool part of my work. Of course, being able to see each other, seeing clients one-on-one, I have a healing center here in Arizona, and I opened one in 2003 that we outgrew, so we needed to get a bigger space, and so we have a larger healing center. We have a massage therapist and a labyrinth, and I do my workshops and events and a lot of my online training through there. And so, I've had a lot of amazing gifts and opportunities, and really because I think that I allow myself to receive them now. I never knew how to do that before. I was always in my own way. I was sabotaging myself, and I think a lot of people do that.
Well, with how you are and just, the approach that you take with everyone, that's one thing that I can say about you is you are truly genuine. You are truly sunny and inspirational, and you're this light. And I think it's such a breath of fresh air to deal with somebody who's very genuine. And I do have a question for you with regards to your premiere of A Seance With. And I know there is a lot of confusion, sometimes even fear around things like this. Explain this TV show to our listeners, because I found it to be very, very informational and fun, and it wasn't at all what I thought it was going to be.
Yeah, I love that. I think that, initially when I was contacted for the show, they told me what the topic was going to be, doing readings with people. And I thought, cool. And then they said it's readings with celebrity. And I said, okay, cool, that's fine, because a celebrity is just like anybody else to me. And then when they told me that they wanted to have the title be a seance with, I'm like, well, why a seance? Like, that's like one of the most negative words anybody ever could use for mediums. And so why are we going to go there? And basically, I think that what their intention is to shine a light on something that has such a negative, eerie vibe to it, and change the perception of it. But at the time when I heard it, my initial thought was, oh, I don't want to step into that, because there's going to be all kinds of people having a struggle with it. But my spirit said to me, Sunny, you're the perfect person to be able to turn that around and teach people that it isn't what they perceive it to be. And, the word seance, the TV show is called The Seance With, and it features a different celebrity each week. We're in the process right now of waiting to see if it's going to be picked up or not for a series. This was the pilot, the debut. And so when I really got to the place of recognizing that, okay, I am just meant to just shine the light and let people have their own experience with it, and to teach. The word seance just means to sit with, to sit. And then with the intention of connecting with spirit. Well, people do that all the time. People are always asking to connect with their mother who passed, and in their own living rooms. They do it at church all the time. They light candles, they burn incense, and they pray to their loved ones to come to them, to show them a sign. People are doing it all the time. It's just that it's got a negative connotation around it because of our own fears and beliefs that we've been brought up with. And so that's really one of the reasons I chose to step into it. So the show is basically me. I don't know who I'm meeting, and I don't know where I'm going. I'm just going to meet this person, this celebrity, and I'm going to go to 2 locations that they feel connected to. It could be their house. It could be a place of business. It could be somebody else's house. It could be a park. It could be anywhere. And just tune into the energies around them, and they bring 2 friends with as support. And then tune into the energies and do a seance, sit with them and connect with the energies and give them whatever messages come through. And in the process, of course, my intention is to teach and to help support and to create some maybe closure or answer some questions and ultimately have them have the opportunity to heal if they choose.
Wonderful. Well, I know that what you've created around your workshops and your training programs, there are a lot of people out there that possess some form of gift or intuitive ability, and sometimes that's not exactly widely accepted amongst their family or their friends, and you really create a very non-judgmental atmosphere to help people be able to draw on and expand on their gifts. Can you explain a little bit of that?
Well, I do think that everybody has a natural ability, and part of my challenge in my life was that growing up, I was different, and I didn't really fully embrace my gifts till I was in my mid-20s because I didn't want to be different, and because I didn't like the feeling of not fitting in and all of that. And so part of the purpose for me was to create opportunities for people to come together of like minds, because we didn't really have that opportunity when I was exploring and learning about this. And so, that's part of the reason that I created my healing center, but also why I do so much in my online community and webcasts and things like that, because everybody has that natural intuition. We're all spirit embodied. So we all have that connection to spirit. And it's just learning how to tune into it, or to be present with it, or to acknowledge it, or even have the awareness around it. And when we start to do that, then what I found for myself anyway is that life starts to flow. We no longer have the resistance and continue pushing against and pushing against and pushing against. Instead, it flows. It's almost like we're floating down the river instead of trying to push up the river. And I think that can be really helpful in our lives, to start asking for guidance and direction and allow ourselves to receive it. So part of my purpose is being able to teach people how to receive it, and how to understand it, and how to interpret it, and not necessarily because the way I interpret it is correctly, but how to learn to discern so that they can interpret themselves.
Wonderful. Now, this new book that you have coming out in October, The Love Never Ends. Tell us a little bit about that.
Well, The Love Never Ends is basically created to help people understand that once our loved ones have passed, our animals, our friends, our family members, once they've transitioned, left this physical earth and dropped their physical body, their spirit carries on. And that their spirit carries on in our experience if we're willing to see it, if we're willing to tune in, if we're willing to quiet our minds and be present. And so this book is very much a teaching book. There's some activities in it as well, but it's teaching people how to be able to tune in and how to recognize the signs. And then, part of my teaching approach is I'm really a storyteller. And so there's many stories in there of my own personal experience, as well as some of my clients' experiences that I've been involved with, where they have had their spirit, their loved ones coming through and giving them messages, and how that might have showed up, or children dying, and how, what the children say after they've passed, so that my intention is to help answer some questions that might allow us to not carry so much pain and grief and sadness, and instead tune back into the energy of the heart and carry the love forward, and recognize that, hey, they're just visiting. It's almost like they went on vacation. They went to China, and you can't talk to them in English anymore because they don't speak English. But if you can learn Chinese, the language of the spirit world, if you can learn their language, you'll still be able to connect with them. And so that's the intention, is teaching people the language, so to speak, so that they can see and feel and hear and know their loved ones that have transitioned.
Wonderful. I'm looking forward to that one. Before we finish up here, Sunny, I would like to just ask you one thing. If you could leave one piece of wisdom, guidance, advice to our listeners today that will help them to start their journey toward empowering themselves, what would it be?
Wow, one piece. I'm a talker, so let's see. I think probably the one thing that, and I say this a lot, I get tired of saying it, but I think this would be the truth for me, is for us to learn how to hold our own energy. I think that we as a society have a tendency to take on the pain, the drama, the experiences of those around us that we love so much. And when we do that, we literally expand the problem, we expand the drama, we make it bigger. If we can learn how to hold our own energy, maintain our own energy, be an observer of other people's experiences instead of an absorber of other people's experiences, then we can be a part of the solution. We can be a part of the help. But if I'm if I get as wrapped up in your pain as you are, then I just become an extension of that. And I don't have the solutions. I add to the problem. And so doing that and doing it consistently for me is working with Archangel Michael. But people can call in the white light, the Christ light, surrounding ourselves in some kind of intention or vision or imagination of for Michael, it's blue light, surrounding yourself in that blue light, or asking Michael to surround you so that you don't absorb the energy of other people, not because we think they're bad, but because I need to hold my own energy to be creating for my life. And I do not want to take on the energy of other people that I am not in control of. I can't fix it anyway. But if I can be a loving guide, if I can be a support, the best way I'm going to do that is to be an observer of it so that I can be a supporter to those people instead of taking it on and feeling it. Because then I really need them to feel better so I can feel better. And that creates a lot of unhealthy relationships.
Wow, that was really great advice. I really, like I said, I'm glad you were able to participate in this summit with me. I've enjoyed our time here today, and I definitely hope that there are people out there that have listened to this who can certainly relate to those stories and understand that there is hope for them. There is a light at the end of the tunnel, and they just need to start taking those steps to making the changes in their lives that they need to make in order to put themselves where they want to be.
Absolutely. And it's a choice. Some days we don't make good choices and other days we do. And you do get to choose what you want to create in your life. So we're not disempowered. We very much have the power, and it's through choice. And we always have a choice. Even when there's seemingly no choice at all, there is still a choice. The choice might be to live or die, but it's a choice. And so that can empower us just simply by knowing I have a choice in this.
Wonderful. Well, thank you. And for those of you that are listening to this interview, at the bottom of this email, there will be a link directly to Sunny Dawn Johnston's website so that you can see and find out even more information on your own about her. And we will also have a link to her free gift. And Sunny, I just want to thank you again for being a part of this interview series. And I wish you much luck in your endeavors. You just seem to keep going and going and going.
Oh, well, thank you so much. I appreciate you inviting me, and I'm sending love to everyone that participates and the ripple effect of that on out.
Thanks, Sunny.
You bet.